She married him out of duty, then watched the human become a battle deity HFY. And yet, when the day came, her heart had not prepared her for the human she was to wed. He was unlike any warrior she had met. Humans, as a species, were known for curiosity and persistence, but they lacked the strength, speed, and instincts of her own kind. To her court and advisors, the marriage was a strategic move, a way to solidify peace with the Terran colonies who had recently shown interest in the sector. But to Aralyn, it felt like a personal defeat. She had imagined a partner who could match her intellect and prowess, not someone who seemed ordinary at first glance. The human, known simply as Captain Elias Grant, waited in the grand audience hall. His posture was straight, his uniform neat, yet his hands were steady, betraying none of the anxiety that might have consumed a lesser man. When he saw her, he bowed politely, but there was no hesitation in his eyes, only quiet confidence. Aralyn could not hide her skepticism. "I assume you understand the responsibilities this marriage entails," she said, her tone sharp, yet formal. "I do, Princess Aralyn," Elias replied calmly. His voice had a depth to it, calm but firm. "I may be human, but I will serve with loyalty and honor." But something in Elias' demeanor caused even the most critical advisors to pause. He radiated a quiet strength that demanded acknowledgement, though Aralyn refused to admit it. Over the next few days, the palace became a place of subtle tension. Aralyn watched Elias closely. He learned quickly, observing customs, listening to the advice of elders, and never speaking out of turn. He was patient, almost too patient, as if calculating each move with precision. For a human, she thought, he was unusually sharp. Yet she refused to let admiration reach her heart. Duty had called her, and she would not bend to curiosity or intrigue. Their first official event together was a ceremonial parade, meant to display the unity between the human and her people. The streets were lined with citizens from across the capital, and the banners fluttered proudly. Aliens of all shapes and sizes marched in formation, their armor glinting under the sunlight. Elias rode beside Aralyn with quiet dignity, his gaze forward, yet alert. During the parade, a sudden commotion arose. A group of rogue soldiers, disgruntled and opposed to the alliance, attempted to breach the barricades. Chaos erupted as the crowd panicked. Aralyn's guards reacted immediately, but she noticed Elias' eyes scanning the situation with sharp focus. Before anyone could shout orders, he had dismounted, moving with speed and precision that caught the rebels off guard. His movements were fluid, almost instinctive, as he disarmed one assailant and redirected another without hesitation. Gasps ran through the crowd. Even Aralyn felt a flicker of surprise. Elias had acted not with brute force, but with controlled skill that seemed beyond ordinary human capability. He moved among the aliens like he had trained for this world all his life, blending strategy with action in a way that made it clear he understood combat at a level few could match. After the commotion ended, Aralyn approached him, her curiosity battling her pride. "You handled that well," she said, her tone measured. Elias gave a small nod, his expression calm. "The safety of the people comes first, Princess. Strategy and timing matter as much as strength." Yet she reminded herself that admiration was dangerous. Duty came first, emotion second. In the days that followed, life in the palace settled into a rhythm. Elias attended councils, observed military exercises, and conversed politely with alien scholars. He asked questions, not as an outsider, but as someone genuinely interested in learning and understanding. His approach was unlike any alien diplomat she had encountered. While many humans were bold or brash, Elias was deliberate, respectful, and quietly confident. Aralyn found herself watching him from the balcony during training sessions. He moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural for a human, predicting his sparring partner's moves and countering them with precision. Some of the alien soldiers whispered among themselves, calling him a natural prodigy. Aralyn felt a strange stir of emotion, one she could not yet name: pride, curiosity, perhaps a hint of fear that this human could surpass expectations in ways she had not imagined. One evening, she found herself in the training hall when Elias practiced alone. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor. He performed a series of drills combining footwork, strikes, and defensive maneuvers with flawless timing. His focus was absolute, his body moving in harmony with his mind. Aerolin watched, silent, feeling a mix of awe and disbelief. Finally, he paused and looked at her, a faint smile on his face. "It takes practice, Princess. Even humans can rise above limits if they commit fully." She found herself unable to speak, caught between pride in her own knowledge of warriors and a grudging respect for this human who had quietly shattered her assumptions. Days turned into weeks, and the palace grew accustomed to Elia's presence. Rumors began to spread quietly among the citizens and soldiers. The human was different. He was not just a soldier. He was someone who inspired others, who seemed to anticipate outcomes before they happened, and who handled challenges with a calm that bordered on legendary. Even the alien generals started seeking his counsel, impressed by his strategic insight. Aerolin struggled internally. She had married for duty, yet she could not deny the growing fascination she felt toward her human husband. It was not love, at least not yet, but it was an acknowledgement that she had underestimated him. The more she observed, the more she realized that Elias possessed qualities that transcended his species. Strength, yes, but also intelligence, empathy, and leadership. One day, an important diplomatic delegation arrived from a neighboring planet. They questioned the alliance, doubting that a human could hold up under alien pressure. Aerolin's advisors looked at Elias with thinly veiled skepticism. Elias stepped forward calmly. "Strength is not measured by size or speed alone," he said, addressing the delegates. "It is measured by wisdom, courage, and the will to protect others. Humans may be different, but our resolve is strong." That night, Aerolin stood on her balcony, gazing at the twin suns as they dipped below the horizon. Elias had returned to his quarters, but she could not stop thinking about him. She had entered this marriage with resentment, with the belief that duty demanded sacrifice. And yet, she could not ignore the quiet power, the unexpected grace, and the mysterious strength of the human beside her. Perhaps, she thought, humans were not as fragile as she had assumed. Perhaps there was more to them, something that could challenge legends, something that could even surpass the expectations of alien myths. The sun disappeared completely, leaving the city bathed in the soft glow of artificial lights. Aerolin knew that the coming days would test them both. The peace of the alliance was fragile, and the galaxy beyond was unpredictable. Yet, she also sensed that Elias Grant was not a man to be underestimated. And for the first time, she felt a tinge of anticipation, a quiet curiosity about what her human husband might truly become. The story of duty and doubt had only just begun. In the halls of the palace, whispers of the human's potential grew, unnoticed by most but keenly observed by the princess. She had married out of obligation, but already she was beginning to see a spark of legend in the man she had so lightly judged. And so, as the night deepened, the stage was set. The human stood quietly in his quarters, unaware of the legends forming around him, yet ready to meet challenges with a calm and strength that would one day change the course of worlds. Aerolin, caught between duty and intrigue, could only watch, wondering what the future might hold, and whether she had underestimated the most extraordinary human she had ever known. The palace that once felt secure now hummed with tension. Word had arrived from the outer provinces. A rogue faction of aliens, dissatisfied with the peace treaty, was mobilizing forces near the capital. Rumors of rebellion spread through the city like wildfire. The council called for an urgent meeting, and Princess Aerolin found herself seated beside her human husband, Captain Elias Grant. Elias observed the alien generals and diplomats with calm eyes. Unlike most humans, he did not flinch at the intimidating presence of towering warriors or the piercing gaze of strategists who had planned wars for centuries. Instead, he listened carefully, asking questions that cut through the political noise. Arlen noticed that even the council members who had doubted him leaned forward, curious about his insights. "The rebels have been underestimated," Elias said in measured tones. "They know the terrain, the weak points of our patrols, and they are highly motivated. If we act rashly, they could breach the city walls before reinforcements arrive." Strength is not only in numbers or size. It is in coordination, planning, and morale. With careful strategy, even a smaller force can overcome a larger one. Preparations began immediately. Soldiers trained harder, barricades were reinforced, and the streets were monitored for any suspicious activity. Elias moved among the ranks, not as an outsider but as a leader. He spoke to the troops in a way that inspired confidence. He reminded them that courage was not a trait of one species, it was universal. The first skirmish came sooner than expected. Scouts reported small groups of rebels attempting to infiltrate the outer districts. The palace sent out a contingent with Elias riding at the forefront. His presence was commanding. Alien soldiers, initially skeptical, found themselves following his lead instinctively. The battle was quick but intense. Rebel forces were clever, using hit-and-run tactics that frustrated the more traditional alien fighters. Elias anticipated their moves, predicting ambushes and redirecting soldiers with precise orders. He fought alongside them, but his focus was always on strategy rather than brute force. Each step, each decision, seemed deliberate, as if he could foresee the outcome before it occurred. Princess Arlen observed from the palace balcony, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. She had married this human out of duty, expecting a figurehead at best. And yet, here he was, leading alien soldiers, organizing defenses, and turning the tide against the rebels with a calm that seemed almost supernatural. When the skirmish ended, the rebels retreated, leaving the streets mostly intact. The alien generals approached Elias cautiously, bowing in respect. "Your tactics, they are exceptional," one said, struggling to find words. Elias nodded modestly. "We all have strengths, we must use them together." He was a leader, a strategist, and perhaps most importantly, someone who inspired loyalty without demanding it. Days passed, and the tension in the city grew. Rebel forces consolidated, and reports indicated they were planning a full-scale assault. The palace prepared for war, and Arlen could feel the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her. She had once thought that marrying a human was a mere formality. Now, she realized that Elias might be the key to survival. Elias spent long hours in the war room, studying maps, analyzing reports, and consulting with alien commanders. He suggested patrol rotations, supply line protections, and even unconventional tactics that the alien generals had never considered. Some of his ideas were met with skepticism, but when he explained the reasoning behind each, even the most rigid traditionalists could not argue. One evening, Arlen joined him in the war room. She found him tracing routes on a holographic map, his eyes focused, lips pressed in concentration. "You are different," she said softly. "I underestimated you." "Do you really think we can stop them?" she asked. He nodded. "Not alone, but together we have a chance." His calmness was remarkable, and it inspired confidence in those around him. Soldiers moved quickly and decisively under his command, as if guided by a force larger than themselves. The battle raged for hours. The rebels struck from multiple directions, testing every defense. Yet Elias remained in control. He anticipated attacks, redirected forces, and even took personal risks to secure vulnerable points. His strategy was not just about winning, it was about minimizing loss, protecting lives, and maintaining morale. Arlen could not tear her eyes away. The human she had once thought weak moved with precision, courage, and intelligence that exceeded anything she had imagined. He inspired the soldiers, not through fear or authority, but through example. Every action seemed to say, "We can endure, we can overcome. We owe our survival to you." His courage, intelligence, and compassion were reshaping her understanding of what humanity could achieve. That night, the city celebrated cautiously, repairing damages and tending to the wounded. Arilyn found herself walking beside Elias through the quiet streets, now dimly lit by lanterns and the glow of repaired walls. "You were extraordinary today," she said softly, still struggling with her emotions. He shook his head gently. "Extraordinary? No, I did what I had to do. I cannot ignore those in need. That is strength not for oneself but for others." She realized that this human possessed qualities her people valued above all: courage, honor, and wisdom. He had not only defended the city but had also earned the respect of her people in ways she could never have predicted. Days later, the council formally recognized Elia's contributions. He received honors, not just for bravery, but for his strategic brilliance. The citizens began speaking in hushed tones about the human who had led them to victory, calling him a figure that seemed to surpass normal limits. Even Arilyn heard whispers in the palace. "The human, he is different, perhaps more than we ever imagined." Duty had brought her to this marriage, yet admiration and curiosity now intertwined with her obligation. She found herself watching him in ways she had never watched a spouse before, analyzing, noticing, learning. There was something more to Elias Grant than she could describe, something that might one day reshape the galaxy's perception of humans. The following weeks were a time of rebuilding and vigilance. The rebels had not been entirely defeated, but their forces were diminished. Elias worked tirelessly alongside Arilyn and her advisors, ensuring that the city was protected and prepared for any future threats. He trained soldiers, refined strategies, and most importantly, earned trust. Every decision, every action, strengthened his reputation. Arilyn realized that the human she had married out of obligation was no longer merely her husband. He was a figure of inspiration, a leader who transcended the limits of his species, and someone whose presence would forever change the political landscape of her world. She began to see him not as a human but as a force, a potential legend in the making. One evening she stood in the palace gardens, reflecting on the events. The stars above shone brightly, and she thought of the battles yet to come. She knew the galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but she also knew that with Elias by her side, she had witnessed a glimpse of humanity's true potential. Duty had led her to him, but admiration, respect, and perhaps even a spark of something more were beginning to root themselves in her heart. The human who had once seemed ordinary had proven extraordinary, not just in strength, but in courage, intelligence, and spirit. And so, as the twin moons rose over the city, Arilyn understood that this was only the beginning. The trials ahead would test them both, but she now had faith that the human she had married could face any challenge, and perhaps even change the course of history. The skies above the capital were dark with the approach of the enemy. The rogue alien faction, emboldened by their recent successes in outlying systems, had amassed an army larger than anyone had anticipated. Scouts reported hundreds of ships in formation, carrying troops, weapons, and monstrous war beasts that could flatten entire districts. Panic rippled through the city, but Princess Arilyn stood silently beside Captain Elias Grant, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Elias surveyed the enemy fleet through the strategic holomap. His calm, steady demeanor contrasted sharply with the anxious murmurs of the alien generals and council members. "They are strong," he said quietly, "but strength alone does not win battles. Discipline, strategy, and timing matter more than numbers. How can you guide an army against this force?" The city had transformed into a fortress. Barricades lined every street, defensive turrets were stationed along the walls, and soldiers readied themselves for the assault. Elias moved among them, speaking words of encouragement, explaining strategies, and positioning troops with remarkable precision. He spoke not as a commander giving orders, but as someone inspiring belief. The first wave of attackers struck just after sunrise. Massive war beasts thundered across the fields, followed by heavily armed troops. Alien soldiers braced themselves, and chaos threatened to erupt. But Elias had anticipated their moves. He directed smaller squads to flank the beasts, while strategically positioning heavier units to block advancing forces. The battle was intense. Explosions rocked the ground, alien cries echoed through the air, and the clash of weapons created a deafening symphony of war. Yet Elias remained focused, moving along the lines, correcting mistakes, giving precise instructions. His calm presence steadied the soldiers around him, turning panic into coordinated action. Princess Arilyn observed from the command tower. Her heart raced, but she could not tear her eyes away. Each time a wave of attackers broke through, Elias countered with skill and ingenuity. He used terrain to their advantage, anticipated enemy patterns, and even personally led daring strikes against critical targets. At one point, a monstrous beast broke through the outer defenses, heading straight for the city gates. Alien soldiers hesitated, unsure how to stop it. Elias leaped into action. Using a combination of human combat techniques and the alien weapons at his disposal, he engaged the beast directly. With precise strikes and clever maneuvers, he incapacitated it without unnecessary destruction. The soldiers around him cheered, their morale soaring. Arilyn felt a surge of admiration she could no longer deny. This human, her human, was extraordinary. He was not just surviving the battle, he was shaping it, controlling it, and inspiring those around him. As the day wore on, the rebels launched wave after wave of attacks. Each time, Elias adapted. He combined alien technology with human tactics, creating unexpected strategies that the enemy could not predict. Alien generals who had doubted him now followed his lead without question, executing maneuvers they themselves had never considered. The tide of battle began to turn. The rebels, who had expected an easy victory, found themselves outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and outmatched. Their war beasts were incapacitated, supply lines disrupted, and morale shattered. The city's defenders, under Elias' guidance, pushed forward with renewed energy, gaining ground with each passing hour. Arilyn could hardly contain her astonishment. She had married him out of duty, expecting a figurehead at best. Instead, she was witnessing a man who was becoming a legend before her eyes. The whispers among the soldiers grew louder. The human, he fights like a god. One by one, their ships and units surrendered or retreated, leaving the city victorious. The aftermath was breathtaking. The city had suffered damage, but countless lives had been saved. Soldiers carried the wounded, repaired barricades, and celebrated their survival. Yet all eyes were on Elias, standing calmly amidst the chaos, surveying the battlefield as if he had predicted every outcome. Princess Arilyn approached him cautiously. You were incredible," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I have never seen anything like it." The legend grew with each retelling of the battle, how a single human had led alien soldiers to victory against overwhelming odds, how his strategies were flawless, and how his courage inspired everyone around him. Arilyn struggled with her own feelings. She had entered this marriage out of obligation, yet now she found herself seeing him in a new light. He was not merely a soldier or a husband, he was a force, a leader who could shape the fate of worlds. Her respect had grown into admiration, and admiration was slowly giving way to something deeper. In the following days, Elias worked tirelessly to ensure the city's safety. He trained soldiers, reorganized defenses, and helped rebuild damaged areas. He also took the time to listen to the people, understanding their concerns and fears. His humanity, his compassion and respect for life, shone as brightly as his skill in battle. Arilyn observed him closely. He remained calm under pressure, always thinking ahead, always considering the welfare of others. His actions inspired not only her, but also the citizens and soldiers alike. Everywhere he went, people spoke of his bravery, intelligence, and fairness. Even the most skeptical alien officials could not deny his impact. One evening, Arilyn and Elias walked through the palace gardens, now filled with the soft light of repaired lanterns. The city was quiet, recovering from the chaos of battle. "Do you realize what you have done?" she asked, her voice low. Elias looked at her thoughtfully. "I did what was necessary. I only hope it will prevent further suffering." This human, whom she had once underestimated, had proven himself beyond imagination. He had risen not through raw strength alone, but through courage, strategy, and a deep understanding of those around him. He had shown that humanity, when combined with wisdom and determination, could surpass even the most formidable alien legends. The city began to honor Elias formally. Soldiers received recognition for their bravery, and the people celebrated their unexpected hero. Yet even amidst the celebrations, whispers continued about the human who had become more than a man, a symbol of courage, intelligence, and hope. Arilyn stood among the crowd, her heart swelling with pride and a strange new emotion she could not yet name. She had married for duty, but she now realized that she had gained a partner whose strength and spirit were unmatched. The human at her side had become a beacon of inspiration, and she knew that the galaxy would never forget his name. Night fell, and the twin moons rose above the city. The stars shone brightly, as if acknowledging the presence of a new legend in the universe. Arilyn gazed at Elias, standing tall and calm despite the exhaustion etched into his face. She understood now that this was no ordinary human. He was extraordinary, a battle deity in the making, whose courage and wisdom would influence generations to come. And as the city slept, recovering from the turmoil of battle, Arilyn felt a deep certainty. The human she had married out of duty had become something far greater than she, or anyone, had anticipated. His journey was only beginning, and the galaxy would soon witness the full extent of his power, intelligence, and indomitable spirit. The princess, once resigned to obligation, now looked forward with anticipation. She had seen the first signs of legend. She had witnessed humanity rise above expectations, and she knew, without a doubt, that the battles ahead would reveal even more of the extraordinary force that was her human husband. The city was alive with celebration, yet Princess Arilyn felt no rest in her heart. Victory had been achieved, but the galaxy remained unpredictable. Rebels could regroup, new threats could emerge, and the fragile peace her marriage had helped secure could unravel at any moment. She walked through the bustling streets, observing the citizens who whispered with awe about the human who had changed their fate. Elias moved among them quietly, offering guidance and reassurance. Soldiers approached him for advice, citizens bowed or waved, and alien generals sought his counsel. He did not seek glory, yet it followed him wherever he went. Even now, months after the decisive battle, his presence remained a symbol of hope and strength. Arilyn approached him in the central plaza, the banners of victory fluttering in the breeze. "The people call you a battle deity," she said softly. "Do you understand what that means to them? They see a human who stands above fear, who leads without doubt, and who inspires even those stronger than himself. They see legend. If I can inspire even a little, then I have done something meaningful." Reports came from distant systems, pirates attacking trade routes, political disputes rising among allied planets, and whispers of strange, unknown forces approaching from the outer sectors. Despite this, the people of the capital had faith. They had witnessed the extraordinary. They had seen a human rise above expectation, fight with unmatched skill, and protect lives with intelligence and courage that transcended species. To them, Elias was not just a soldier. He was a beacon, proof that humanity could achieve greatness anywhere in the stars. Arilyn, who had once married out of duty, now found herself watching Elias in a new light. She saw him not only as a husband but as a partner in the truest sense. His leadership, his compassion, and his unwavering integrity had earned her respect, admiration, and trust. Slowly, a deeper bond was forming between them, not of obligation, but of shared purpose and understanding. One morning, news arrived of a remote settlement under threat from a band of marauders. Without hesitation, Elias prepared a team, including elite soldiers from both human and alien units, to respond. Arlen insisted on accompanying him, not as a bystander, but as an active participant in governance and strategy. The journey was arduous, spanning hostile terrain and navigating treacherous asteroid belts. Along the way, Elias demonstrated his unparalleled skill in diplomacy, combat, and tactical planning. He mediated disputes between alien soldiers and human volunteers, ensuring unity despite differences in culture and perspective. He anticipated potential ambushes, prepared escape routes, and coordinated resources with precision that astonished even the most seasoned alien commanders. When they arrived at the settlement, the marauders were already attacking. Buildings burned and the people fled for cover. Elias took command immediately. He organized defenses, instructed civilians on evacuation procedures, and positioned his troops to maximize their advantage. His calm presence instilled courage in all who followed him. The battle was intense. Marauders wielded advanced weaponry and fought with ferocity, yet Elias' strategy prevailed. He led counterattacks, using terrain and surprise maneuvers to turn the tide. His tactics were unconventional but brilliantly effective. Alien soldiers who had once doubted human ingenuity now marveled at his foresight. Arlen watched in awe. This human, her husband, was more than a warrior. He was a master of both strategy and leadership. Every decision he made reflected not just skill, but a profound understanding of life, loyalty, and justice. The settlement was saved with minimal casualties, and the marauders retreated in confusion and defeat. That evening, as the sun set over the liberated settlement, Arlen and Elias stood together, surveying the repaired homes and grateful citizens. "You have changed so much in so little time," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Elias smiled gently. "I only do what is right. If others are inspired to do the same, then perhaps we can shape a better future together." She saw someone capable of greatness, someone who could inspire civilizations, and someone whose presence could change the course of history. In the weeks that followed, Elias continued to solidify his reputation. He mediated disputes between alien factions, defended vulnerable systems, and guided military training programs that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Each success strengthened his legend. Stories of his feats spread across the galaxy. The human who led aliens to victory, the man whose strategy was unmatched, the soldier whose courage inspired loyalty and hope. Arlen often stood by his side during these moments, quietly observing. She had married him out of duty, expecting formality and obligation. Instead, she found herself witnessing a transformation, a human rising to heights she had never imagined, challenging myths and reshaping history. One night, as they walked through the palace gardens, Arlen finally spoke the words she had held back for so long. "Elias, I thought I married you out of duty. I expected formality, maybe even disappointment. But what I see now, it is beyond anything I could have imagined. You have become more than a warrior, you are a symbol, a leader, and something even greater. If that has inspired others, then it is a responsibility I will carry gladly." Duty had brought them together, but what bound them now was far stronger. Shared purpose, trust, and recognition of the extraordinary within the human she had once underestimated. In the following months, Elia's legend only grew. Alien societies began to adopt human strategies he introduced. Young soldiers trained under his guidance, aspiring to emulate his courage and intelligence. Even distant planets sent envoys to witness his leadership firsthand. The galaxy, once skeptical of humans, began to see them in a new light, as beings capable of wisdom, heroism, and greatness beyond expectation. Arlen reflected on all that had happened. She had married for duty, expecting obligation and structure. Instead, she had witnessed a human rise to a level that inspired entire civilizations. She realized that her life had been transformed, not by politics or strategy alone, but by the character of the man beside her. Elias had become more than a battle deity in legend. He had become a living example of what humanity could achieve when courage, wisdom, and compassion combined. And he had done it not through domination, but through respect, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to others. The palace grew quiet as peace settled across the city. Citizens rebuilt their lives, soldiers trained under new standards of excellence, and the Alien Council recognized Elias as a key figure in securing lasting alliances. Yet through all of this, he remained humble, focused, and devoted to the greater good. One evening, Arilyn stood on the balcony, gazing at the horizon. She thought of the battles fought, the lives saved, and the incredible journey that had begun with duty but had transformed into partnership, admiration, and respect. Elias joined her silently, his presence comforting and steady. "The galaxy will remember you," she said softly. He shook his head. "Perhaps, but I hope it remembers all of us, the soldiers, the citizens, the leaders who chose courage and wisdom over fear and violence. That is the true legacy." The human she had married had exceeded every expectation, becoming a figure of inspiration, a protector, and a guide. She knew the galaxy would tell stories of him for generations, not as a human alone, but as a battle deity who showed the extraordinary potential of humanity. The twin moons rose above the capital, casting silver light over the city. Arilyn and Elias stood together, united not by obligation alone, but by shared purpose, respect, and a bond forged through trials and triumphs. They had faced danger, inspired others, and changed the course of history. And as the stars glittered overhead, the galaxy watched, knowing that humanity had proven itself worthy of legend, and that a human, guided by courage, wisdom, and honor, could stand among the greatest heroes the universe had ever known. Duty had brought them together. War had revealed his strength. And in the end, the human had become more than anyone could have imagined, a living symbol of hope, courage, and the limitless potential of humanity. The story of Elias Grant and Princess Arilyn would be remembered for centuries, not merely as a tale of marriage or alliance, but as the story of a human who became a battle deity, and a princess who learned that true greatness often comes from the most unexpected places. The galaxy had changed, and so had they.